And one of the things I want to say about this speaker is I met him last month, like a lot of you guys did, and reading his bio is very impressive. So he has a lot of very great conservative ideas. He is planning on running for lieutenant governor in 2022. So what I really appreciate with him is not only is he looking forward, but he called me yesterday and asked, when I asked him a few days ago if he could speak about something simple as SB50, and I know it's not a simple issue, but he stepped to the plate and said, he'll talk about it. And he asked how we felt about SB50, and I gave him some of my opinions on how I felt. And so I really like that in the sense that Errol Weber really wants to know how we think. So I think he can offer some solutions. He can identify some issues, some problems, and offer some solutions to help that. So with that, I want to introduce Errol Weber, and he's going to talk about SB50.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone, and how are you doing? So I'm Errol Weber, and I want to start off this speech about SB50 by asking around the room, when someone says generational wealth, what does that mean to you? Just anyone, you can blurt out, you can raise your hand. What does generational wealth mean to you? Or I'm going to start picking people. I'm going to pick you.
Well, I would say it's wealth passed on from generation to generation. That would be my definition.
Okay. And does anyone else have another way that they would define or ideate generational wealth being passed on?
I add to that hard work and saving.
Hard work and saving.
For your children and your grandchildren.
So I grew up in Jamaica, and in Jamaica we owned a whole bunch of property. Like my family, within our family, we had the equivalent of a city block, half of a mountain, and part of a waterfall. And my mom drove home the idea of growing generational wealth within our family so that you have something to pass on to a generation and your future family. And we came to the US in 2002, and I spent a decade living in Baltimore. All around us were middle-income suburban neighborhoods where we got to see the fruit of many people's labor when it came to them spending decades to build their own generational wealth and realize their idea of the American dream, which includes home ownership. So fast forward a couple of years and I moved to California, and I've lived in Miracle Mile, the Hollywood Hills, Studio City, Culver City, and now in downtown LA, or just outside of downtown LA, because while I got to experience the gamut from secluded bucolic suburban streets and bustling concrete jungles with brightly colored condos going up, I got to see the real burdensome cost of living in the LA area. And the reason I live just outside of downtown is because I went around and asked a lot of these condo establishments in the downtown area what the rent was like. And they said, on average, that a studio was going for $2,800 a month, and a one-bedroom was going for $4,000 a month. Those glitzy, brightly colored, very squareoid-looking buildings that have been popping up all over the LA area. Now, I might as well buy a house if I'm going to be spending that kind of money on any dwelling. And so, show of hands, how many of you in here own a property and you're happy to, almost the entire room owns property here. So this SB50 is going to be very important to you, or knowing about it is going to be very important to you. Now, here in California, like the rest of the US, we have our fair share of problems. Like the US, we have close to 600,000 homeless people, and 130,000 of them live in California, which is 1/4 of America's homeless live in California. And between 53 to 58,000 live in the Los Angeles area. Now, couple that with the Census Bureau data saying that 7.5 million Californians live in poverty. That is 19% of California's population. Might as well call it 20%, considering all the tons of people coming in from the southern border, but that's another issue. Further up north, in and around Silicon Valley, we have a severe shortage of housing for both low-income folks and for folks who are living closer to the state median income of $59,000 a year. And along comes Senate Bill SB50, California Senate Bill SB50. And let's talk about what is involved in this bill really quickly. The goal of this bill is to right all the wrongs with California's mounting housing crisis, or so they want to do. So Scott Wiener, the legislator who authored the bill, is quoted as saying, "Single-family homes are immoral and yards take up too much room." In suburban neighborhoods, single-family homes are a quiet refuge and a store of wealth for families. Now the state wants to come in with a heavy hand and dictate the zoning of neighborhoods, which is traditionally the responsibility of municipalities themselves. So what does SB50 seek to do? It seeks to take job-rich and good schools neighborhoods, like the one we're in now, and zone it such that any open, available, vacant, or underdeveloped plot of land can be developed into a 40 to 85-foot tower of densely packed apartments, right next to your single-family dwelling. It rewards developers to buy and demolish single-family housing and apartments near rail, train, ferry, or bus stops with a frequency of roughly 10 minutes. If those buses are going frequently enough, that is what they call a transit-rich neighborhood. It also pushes low-income dwellers out of their apartments as well, because though there would be a ban on demolishing occupied apartments, SB50 would prompt developers to buy out renters, claim it as vacant, knock it down, and build another megastructure. And that new megastructure would be mostly very glitzy, very expensive apartments with very few of those apartments allotted to be affordable housing. So we'll still have this problem. Now, naturally, there would be an outcry from communities who very rightfully would want to keep their generational wealth and keep their sanity and not have their suburban neighborhood overrun by a crush of humanity. This is the point where I would tell you to go reach out to your local legislator and tell them to go vote no on SB50, or your neighborhood might be seeing some major changes in the near future. But just 4 or 5 days ago, it failed, and that bill is now in limbo into 2020. To find out more about this bill, you can go to stopsb50.org. But beyond that, let's look at viable solutions, because while I was asked to speak about SB50, I believe this presentation can be more than that. It can be about long-term health for California when it comes to incentivizing sustainable growth and encouraging building of generational wealth. One thing to consider is the development of what is called opportunity zones. Opportunity zones are a new tool for community development. Established in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, opportunity zones provide tax incentives for investment in designated census tracts. So if there are areas around the LA area that are primed for redevelopment and reinvestment, this opportunity zone built into our tax code will allow for developers to go in and rebuild these neighborhoods. But let's take it a step further. Let's get the community involved. California has the ability to be competitive in taking advantage of opportunity zones if we have a clear public investment vision, support our local communities to act and think differently about how we develop project portfolios, and engage potential investors and steer co-investment into the development for more affordable housing. With all of this I just mentioned, there's almost always a group that is left behind, and that's the renters, residents, and the homeless who are displaced by the developers who come in and reshape whole neighborhoods. We saw it with downtown LA when the Staples Center came in, and then the hotels came in to go with it, and then you have all of these very fancy, very glitzy high-rises that pop up that are exorbitantly expensive, and we're seeing it happen again in Inglewood, just up the street, where the new Rams Stadium is coming in, and I've seen stories of people whose rent has gone from $1,100 a month to $2,700 a month. Imagine that. Now, if you really think about it, a lot of the angst that happens with gentrification is mainly from the fact that the people in the neighborhood who are ultimately disadvantaged are the ones who had no stake in their neighborhood to begin with. So let's change that. My solution involves turning the working class into the owning class, especially in neighborhoods that have historically been disadvantaged and have not received as much attention in the past few decades. I call my program the NBA. I want to get tens of thousands of Californians to join the NBA, Neighborhood Building Associations, which is a program designed to first share information with residents about the opportunity to, in small groups and partnerships, own property in their current neighborhood, and leveraging that to supplement their current income with this new source of passive income, which is a great alternative to welfare programs, because we don't want to keep pouring money into welfare programs. Those who are so inclined and are pre-qualified to take that next step will be guided closely on what is involved in making these investments, and through a public-private partnership and with investment funds, they're guided through acquiring funding, are partnered with developers who they hire to work for them, and now these neighborhood residents become owners in property that they, in time, generate income from. Now, when scores of new people come to their neighborhood because they see the potential for growth in that neighborhood, like what's happening in Inglewood, like what happened in downtown LA over the past decade, when that neighborhood prospers and that neighborhood goes up, that resident also goes up with that neighborhood. Their prosperity goes up with that neighborhood, and now they have something that they own that they can make a living on, and is that first step to building long-term wealth for them and for their future generations. Thank you.